It actually gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Mihir Bholey to this seminar today. Also on behalf of the program, I also welcome you all. Very interesting theme and topic, caste conflict and social justice, attributed realities. Dr. Bholey actually comes from an institution that deals with design, National Institute of Design, which is located in Ahmedabad. And Dr. Bholey actually did his PhD from another university which is located in the city, new one. It's called Caste University. Has deep interest in humanities because he has a master's in English literature from Patna University. And he has extensively written and published in national and international media. And he's also visiting professor at the University of Applied Sciences, Northwestern Switzerland, Basel, and deliver talks at various premier Indian institutions, universities outside as well. His latest book called Caste Conflict and Social Justice, The Discourse and Design. As we all know, social justice is a big issue in India for the last at least 30-35 years. Yeah. You can say late 70s, yes. With the rise of the lower caste groups in various parts of the country. And I'm sure that this presentation by Dr. Bholey will be quite exciting.
Professor Mahapatra, Professor Vinita, distinguished academic fraternity at National University of Singapore. Caste is primarily the basic constitution of the basic fabric of Indian society. And if you want to understand the larger edifice of the Indian society, you need to understand what it is made of. And essentially you find that people are divided into different caste groups because you are born into a caste. That's your typical social reality, and that is something which is not in your hand, you cannot change it. So that identity remains with you till you are no more. But why it has become so important today and why it denies to die, that is something very critical for us to understand. I'd like to concentrate myself with the issue of the socio-political issue of caste conflict and the ensuing demand for social justice. And that is something which is a more recent phenomenon, because this is something which is part of our, what you call, a major part of the socio-political discourse. And surprisingly, in a country like India, which is a democracy with multi-party system, where every party has a different kind of political ideology, but there is at least one point, people have been united and there is no disagreement. That is on the issue of extending social justice, or let's say the issues related to caste. If we go a little further, if we say that how do you benefit caste groups, that is through the help of social justice, extending reservation, special privileges and preferences to the marginalized community. Interestingly, even the parliament does not like to debate on that. But that's something very strange, sometimes shocking, sometimes very interesting, but this is typical Indian phenomenon. I can give one example probably which is very recent and you can understand. So people belonging to the marginalized, traditionally marginalized community who come to that position through the policy of reservation, they have seats reserved for them, quotas reserved for them, and then whether they should not be given extended the same facility in the promotion, which was a very critical issue. Late Jayaprakash Narayan and then you have Raman Manohar Lohia, the two most important stalwarts of the socialist movement and social party in India, how they visualized social justice as part of the socialistic ideology, and how it has come to the pass. The Kothari has mentioned at one point of time in one of his writings, he says the politics is a competitive enterprise, its purpose is acquisition of power for the realization of certain goals, and its process is one of identifying and manipulating existing and emerging allegiances in order to mobilize and consolidate positions. The important thing is organization and articulation of support, and when politics is mass-based, the point is to articulate support through organizations in which the masses are to be found. I think that is the most important thing, because where the masses are to be found in India, the masses are to be found in caste associations. So meaning thereby, if you have a grip on a caste group or a combination of different caste groups that really gives you the invincible political cloud and stature. So that is the reason why no political party in India can ignore the caste and caste system and caste groups. I am reminded of Liu Dumont, who has done fabulous work on caste system in India, who says that holism and hierarchy versus, he looks at Indian and Western, Eastern and Western society, particularly Indian Western society. He says that the Indian society is holistic and hierarchical as against equality and individualism, which is part of Buddhism thought and philosophy. Well, and Advaita explains holism and hierarchy as hierarchical in terms of values and collective identity, which are actually part of any traditional society, because any traditional society will believe in some kind of hierarchical system. But the question is, in many levels of disputes, when you try to uncover the underbelly, do people actually believe in this kind of hierarchical system? Because there are many cases, studies, which tell you that people may not also believe in that. Say, for example, if you ask people about their origin, nobody would be willing to accept himself as inferior to somebody else. Then how do you say it is hierarchical? But now this is something which you may probably challenge. Reason being that economically and politically, the mobilization, the upward mobility is there. But does it actually influence any way the social psyche, the way people are accepted in India? That's the question. You can be socially and economically better off because of the changing political support and system, but then does it actually influence the psyche of the Hindu and the large Indian society to accept the people who have moved up in the ladder as different from their earlier status? That is something which, again, we need to understand. If we try to look at the factors of conflict, you can broadly divide them into socio-economic and political. You can also have some other subsets. So each caste group is also restricted in terms of that. And because of which you find that there is lots of economic disparity. So there are people who are doing kind of job which are much more paying and rewarding, and there are people who are doing job which are much more menial and doesn't really reward you economically. So that is also one of the reasons why this hierarchy continues. We are dealing with a system which is very dynamic in nature. These are the broad part of the whole idea, within which if you do a micro-level study, you'll find there are lots of changes also taking place. You also have the politicization of caste, which is a rather recent phenomenon. I think you can trace the history from late 70s up till now, and particularly after 1990s when you had the Mandal Commission for the uplift of other backward classes was introduced. Caste as an institution has become highly politicized. Because of the political intervention, you also have growing political awareness. And the growing political awareness is actually leading to much more assertion in the whole power structure. Now, if we keep that in mind, then you feel that yes, a country like India actually needed some kind of social justice because we have completely marginalized a large section of Indian society. So how do you bring them into the mainstream? If you talk in terms of social equanimity, it is rather difficult to achieve till you have a large population which suffers from caste-based socio-economic prejudices and discrimination, things like that. So what the oppressed demand? The oppressed demand dignity, they demand equality, and they also demand, because of the political intervention these days, share in the power structure and a preferential treatment for mainstreaming. And that is something which has been guaranteed by the Constitution, also in which it talks about social justice. So the preamble of Indian Constitution talks about, justice, which is social, economic, and political to all its citizens. Now, it also states that though it will be extended to all its citizens, but where you identify people or groups which are marginalized, who have been discriminated historically and traditionally, nothing can stop the government to make special provisions to bring them to the mainstream. And that is where the real bone of contention in the political sense in India has happened. And that is where the entire politics of caste has its genesis. You also have the counter polemic coming in because it's a democracy, people are free to opine, and it denounces the whole system of social justice as being prop for the vote bank politics. It says that everybody is equal, but in reality not everybody is equal. So what is the consideration towards merit? That is another big counter question. It also says that it is regressive, it is unreasonable, and it is the perpetuator of caste system, among others, because say that because of the political intervention, the caste system in India is not going away. That many socialists, honestly but wrongly, think that it is sufficient to strive for economic equality and caste in. So, because when you bring economic equality, the caste inequality will vanish of itself as a consequence. They fail to comprehend economic inequality and caste inequality are two demons which have both to be killed. In India, the only caste-based census which has been done so far was done in 1931, prior to Indian independence. Now, probably for the first time, this time, they have agreed, there's a larger unanimity that let's go in for caste-based census. And I think that's also important because only then you have some credible data on which you can make your entire policy. As far as the caste conflict is concerned, if we look at the scenario in Bihar, because of all these factors, we have lots of caste conflict also, which actually gripped Bihar for a very long period. And if I may say, at least for 2 decades, it was very, very violent. 76 to 2001. There were 46 major caste carnages in Bihar, which have been counted. It could be slightly more than that, but largely. And it killed people from different caste groups. There were collateral damages, and the upper caste killed the lower caste people, and the lower caste killed the backward caste. And this is very confusing. In my own research, which is based on the issues of caste conflict in Bihar, how do you look at caste in Bihar in the present situation? And to our utter surprise, 62.9% of the respondents said that caste is nothing but a vote bank. Now, if you do the reality check, because of all these kind of social, political, economic interventions, is the situation really changing? And my prime inquiry was that if you have so much of conflict in the society, can you have social justice? Can justice and conflict coexist? That's a big question. It's not only through the political assertion that you can ensure social justice. For social justice, you also need to find out other models. And those models are economic in nature. To conclude, I would say that what are the myths and what are the realities? The myth is caste is static and monolithic. This is the traditional. It does not change. The reality is caste is dynamic. It's also divergent. It also changes. Caste is for solidarity. This is a myth. But if you study caste more minutely, you find that caste is nothing but it's all about dominance. Because even within the caste group, you are the one who are dominant. They say that the myth, caste is resistant to change. The reality, the caste itself is the agent of change. Caste conflict is assertion of identity and status. Now, it is more about political and economic interest because castes are coming together to form different kind of groups. And finally, caste conflict and social justice can go together. It's very difficult to attain social justice because it's an overarching concept. It does not actually restrict itself to 1 or 2 or 3 caste groups. It talks about the society in general. So if you have conflict going on the one hand, you cannot attain social justice. This is what happens in the name of social justice. Thank you very much for a patient hearing, and it was really delightful being with you and sharing.
The picture, the reservation, is a reservation of caste culture or caste system? What's a reservation?
Well, you get reservation is extended by the government in education and in jobs, right? So these are the 2 places where you get reservation. You ensure reservation for the people who are marginalized, traditionally. Right?
In other words, for certain castes.
For certain castes, yes, certain caste group. But the question is, do you have so many jobs? So what are you doing? I mean, you're just alluring people, and creating some kind of a vote bank every time. You are converting castes into vote banks. So all the political parties would assert for more and more reservation.
Is it the intention of the government that's to have this social classification in the society? Otherwise, if how can this scheduled class can be brought to the mainstream of the society? How can there be a social harmony or the social justice if social what we call that is differences is still maintained as by the state?
Yeah, the concept of social justice means the justice for all, but within that larger umbrella you have smaller units which are marginalized traditionally for historical reasons and other reasons. They need to bring they need to be brought to the mainstream, and for mainstreaming them you have certain kind of facilities being extended to them. Our problem in India is that there is no what you call inquiry of the existing status. You know, you extend a policy and then you make it, you know, a permanent kind of thing, which keeps going on and on and on. So in other way, you are also perpetuating the whole system of caste in India. Whereas the idea is to break this somewhere and bring it to a halt.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.